Just make sure it's working before we both mute ourselves. Hello, Steve. Hello, Skip. We are just pausing right now to wait till 4:30 to start.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure our audio was working before we go live. We are live, but before we start the interview.
Are you able to see me okay?
Yep.
Okay. And the level is okay as far as sound goes?
It certainly is from my end, and Matt will let us know if there's an issue with the live stream.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I've survived the day. One more to go.
That's it. Thank you, Matt. We're good.
So it's been a long couple of days for you. I mean, one thing, it's always long. I'm a good friend with Jim Dexter, and I just cannot believe the days that you all have to put in.
Oh, the district superintendent job it's a great job. I absolutely love it. And helping boards with their search for a superintendent is just incredibly rewarding. Plus you get to know the board and you get to know the community better. So I really enjoy the work.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. I'm going to take the slide down.
Okay.
And then I'm going to highlight you, since you're who everybody's coming to. Has nothing to do with me tonight. So we'll still wait till 4:30, but I want to have everything ready out of respect for the community's time.
Okay, very good. Thank you for those questions. A couple times it is a little bit difficult to hear, so just having something in writing does help tremendously.
Particularly with live streaming.
Yes, yeah, because what can go wrong does go wrong.
All right, it's 4:30. So good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining this community forum to conduct the community interviews of the finalist candidates for the superintendent of Dolgeville Central School District. I'm Sandy Sherwood, the district superintendent for Herkimer-Boces, and I have the privilege of working with the Board of Education throughout the important process of hiring the next superintendent of schools. For many months, the board has been focused on two objectives. The first, bringing in the most skilled and best candidate to lead the school district, but secondly, to assure that there are many voices as part of that selection process. So tonight is very important to the Board of Education. They want to hear from you. The Board of Education appreciates the questions that community members submitted for today's interview and asks you please, after the two interviews, please use the survey link that will be up on the web as well as on Facebook to provide your feedback on both candidates. The board will be using all the stakeholder feedback from today in their selection of the next superintendent of schools. Each of the interviews will last about 45 minutes and will begin with introductory comments from the finalist and will end with closing remarks from each finalist. After both finalists, then the survey link and QR code will be available for you to provide feedback directly to the Board of Education. Please note that there will be a brief break between the two interviews, but the live stream will continue. So I hope you're able to stay for both of the finalists. So with all that said, I'd like to welcome Mr. Clark Skip Holtz, the first of the two finalists tonight. Mr. Holtz, welcome. And would you please begin your opening remarks?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sandy. Good evening and greetings. If you are not aware, this is my fifth interview of the day. Early this morning, I thought to myself, it must go like this. The one who survives until the end wins. But I must admit, though, I found myself truly enjoying the experience and especially getting to know so many creative and dedicated people. To start off, I would like to thank the community for this opportunity to share my heart, who I am, and of course, my vision for Dolgeville and the surrounding area. I've only spent 2 days in your community, but many, many hours looking at the school, looking at reports, looking at plans, looking at policies. I do feel like I know enough already to know that you are a close-knit community. It's a beautiful facility you have. It's a community that understands the importance of after-school programming, clubs, and sports. You have a great place to live, to learn, and to grow. But think about this, if you will. A year ago, you probably never heard of terms like reentry, hybrid learning, PPE, and of course, COVID. We've had to learn so much over this last year. But in reality, I want you to know that a superintendent's position has really pretty drastically changed over the last 10 years. As a superintendent, I've been instructed to protect personal identifiable information as required by Ed Law 2D. I've had to go testing for lead in water. I've had to work with a tax cap. I've had to concern myself with dignity for all students and building security. And here's one for you. Some of you might not be aware of the latest ones, a review of all curriculum to verify equity, inclusion, and diversity. And just recently, now we're in the process of doing public employer health emergency plans. We were hoping that that was only going to be for non-schools, but looks like we have to do that one as well. I say this often, the superintendent's job is not easy in the best of times, and these certainly are not the best of times. But I do bring a level of experience necessary in this age of unknown tomorrows, and I'm honored. I truly am honored to be considered for the position of school superintendent. So, what is important for you to know about me? Honestly, I'm not a fancy person. I have a suit on right now, but I admit I am more comfortable in jeans, boots, and flannel. I live in a log cabin on 10 acres in the woods, but I do want you to know I would gladly give it up to move to your area to be superintendent. I am a father of 4, grandfather of 8. I worked for 6 years in banking before realizing that it wasn't rewarding enough, so I went into the nonprofit area, many years of which was dealing with hardcore drug addicts, and I mean hardcore. But after a season, I made the decision to work with younger people before they made poor life decisions. So in spite of working full-time and working part-time as well for benefits and with 4 young children, I decided to go back to school after being offered an intern fellowship scholarship at Fordham University for my master's in education. I have taught, been a principal, and of course, superintendent for 12 years. Why not retire? Simply, I absolutely love what I am doing. Wherever I have worked, I have a history of creativity and out-of-the-box thinking. One of my creative ideas led me in 2013 to go to Washington, D.C. as one of the top educators in the country. And I actually received that same year proclamation by the New York State legislators. The reason, in the midst of declining enrollment at Newcomb, I began an international program welcoming over 140 students from almost 40 different countries. It reinvented our district, brought diversity, academic challenge, increased our enrollment, and here's one you might like. Also, it brought over $1 million to our district and to our community. If you haven't seen my resume, I suggest you Google Holtz, Newcomb, and International. There are also some videos you can watch as well. Well, enough about me. I know you have questions to ask, and I welcome them, and I thank you for the opportunity of also answering your questions.
Thank you for those remarks. First question, and these were all submitted by community members, all right? The school has revenues comprised of school taxes collected and state and federal aid, as well as donations. Depending on the school year, a school district has a deficit or a surplus. How do you define a deficit or surplus?
Well, actually, probably the person who is asking that question probably was a part of what I call the good old days when we did budgeting and all we had to worry about was our expenses that we were anticipating. Revenue really wasn't even a part of our budget. But now that we have a tax cap, it very much is. I will go with what I would probably consider a pretty conservative definitions and a simplistic definition, but I'll explain why in a second. You know, when you're looking at surplus, obviously it's when your revenue is more than your expenses. And so you do have what it suggests a surplus, and a deficit is actually kind of just the opposite. When you are having revenues less than your expenses, you have a deficit. Seems like we've been facing deficits more than we have our surpluses in the last few years. But here's the reason for my simplicity. There is a danger when you begin to think of it, well, we have additional surplus this year, so I don't have to worry about as much next year. One of the things we've learned in 2000, I think it was 2008, if I remember right, was when all of a sudden New York State decided, well, they weren't going to give us all of our state aid that we qualified for. Kind of sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it? I am still a believer. I do try to be conservative when I'm figuring out my revenue, because you don't know what's going to happen next year. But you really need to stay, with a close estimate of revenue and expenditures and not think about next year, not to think about deficits or surpluses, because you don't know about next year. I'm a firm believer of having a budget that is not only technically zeroed out, but in reality zeroed out. That's it.
Okay, thank you. No, that's fine. Over the past several years, the voters of this district have voted down the proposed school budget. Can you describe the methods you would use to gain voter support for the school budget?
School budgets, as I've already mentioned, are extremely difficult. How do you do that school budget, a workable school budget? How do you get people to agree to it? How do you get the voters to support that budget? It's not an easy thing to do. I do believe that there are certain things that I am a strong believer in, and one of them is communication. There's no way a budget is going to be passed unless it's a properly communicated budget. I do believe we live in a day and age that we have to stay under a tax cap, so that's part of it. Again, as I just mentioned, communication. I think it's important for there to be proper communication. And when I say communication, I need to clarify. I'm talking about I need to be out there into the community. That's essential. If a budget's going to pass, people need to know me. They need to trust me. They need to know that what I say is true. And so I need to be out there during budget time. They need to know that we are being conservative in budgets. And again, that is I don't mean conservative in that way. We're doing what's best for our students, and that is a conservative budget, staying under the tax cap. Then I need to go out. Part of a job of a superintendent is really going out and helping the community to have a good understanding of the school district, and the budgetary process. I've always been very, very much a part of the budgetary process. And of course, I would continue to do so. Thank you. Our attorney would be involved in, one that our BOCES would be involved in, because chances are if it impacts one school district, it's already happened in different places in the state. I honestly do not know if they paid a ransomware or not, but I do think sometimes to protect our information, you might have to do that. Again, not wanting to do that, but I think sometimes you have to consider it.
Okay. I just got word that we had a little bit of an interruption in the live stream. Hopefully it's back up and flowing. So hopefully we'll keep connected here. Okay, it seems digital media and mobile devices are overtaking our classrooms. My kids tell me that Dolgeville allows the use of personal electronic devices, smartphones, in classrooms too much. How do you define the current ideal learning environment for students in a classroom? And how do you think this will change in the next decade?
I think I'd almost need clarification of one thing. Using them in the classroom, what does that mean? When you're talking about in a classroom, is it for academic and educational purposes? That's one issue. Our policy and procedures at Newcomb is we see it, you lose it, unless the teacher asks for it to come out, and we do quite regularly, because honestly, the other part of this question is looking at the next decade. I really honestly do believe that, and some are going to cringe at me saying this, but I do believe that electronic education is the way of the future. And actually, I don't know if there's any board members on, I actually had something where I had a timeout on my presentation to the board. And my timeout was a child going to the parent and says, now my teacher told me to bring in a pencil tomorrow. What's a pencil? You know, there's humor in that, but I really do believe that we are going to see that is going to be our future. And I think we at Newcomb, another thing is, first year we were eligible for computer-based testing. We have done so. I know some school districts that are still dead set opposed to it. My thinking is this: that is the wave, that is the future. Kids are on computers. We have one-on-one. Our kids all work off of computers. And sometimes, though, the cell phone, learning how to properly use a cell phone is much more important than them in the ways they use their cell phone now. So again, if it's just to text to make calls, but if it is for educational purposes, I believe it is the wave of the future. And our kids have embraced it. And I think sometimes of my generation, we need to embrace it as well.
Thank you. What is your experience with grant writing to secure additional opportunities for our school district?
You know, I did some grant writing when I was down at Portchester, a little bit in a very small way when I was in Warrensburg. And honestly, I have teachers doing some grant writing for small projects at Newcomb, but we don't really qualify for much at Newcomb. So to be very truthful, I would have to say not enough. But I will also have to say this, that I know enough to know when you can get grants and what you can get grants for. And I do believe that there are potential for grants when you are dealing with things that are important, things that are essential for good education. So I do think that when you see potential opportunities, I think you can get grants. It's just that it's not as easy as it once was. But I do believe that if you have a good purpose for a grant, you can find grants. And that's one of the things that I do believe in, looking for grants, because I have a good purpose for grants.
Let me just extend that question a little bit on behalf of the community. Aside from grants, are there other revenue streams or other awards, if you will, that might be an opportunity for this community?
I absolutely. One of the things that I have always done is I have a very close relationship that has been built up over time, over the last 12 years, but certainly over the last couple of years. I see the need for, as a school district, you really need to know your politicians. You need to know I have a very close relationship. I could call him up today. Our assemblyman who was just brought on to be our senator, and our senator who just retired, I could call any of them up at any time. I say that to say this. Many times people don't realize that's a great source of funding. You need to know that there's funding. They have funding that is theirs that they can get to. It's grabbed up very quickly, but they are always looking for something that would be considered a good purpose. A great purpose for you would be your pre-K program, because you have every study that suggests that early literacy is important. So if that has not been the case, I would strongly suggest build a good rapport and a good relationship with those who are both in the House and in the Senate.
All right, thank you for that. The Dolgeville Central School District relies heavily on state aid. The governor has indicated a possible 20% cut in state aid could be coming this year. Please describe how you plan to provide a quality education to our students during very difficult financial times.
Boy, you have. Well, first of all, let me say this: to think that it might just be a 20% one-time cut. I personally don't believe that. Our hole is too deep for it to be a 20% cut in state aid over 1 year. I think it's going to be multi-year. So your question even is more important, because that question now would read, about possible 20% cut over multiple years. Add, in addition to that, you've had 7.5% cut over the last 5 years. Add over and above that, we are going to still face difficult times. So your question is one that is, I wish I can say, well, I have a history of budgeting and I will just do this, this, and this. It's not the case. I think there are some things that are essential. You have been charged by Alfred Dodge to prepare children to go out into the world. That's our charge as a community, and I would take that very seriously. So what do? You have to stay, as I said earlier, you got to stay under the tax cap. You then have to work collectively. I am a firm believer of that. I have to involve a lot of different individuals to make sure you have a strong budget that does the best for kids. When I say best for kids, I do need to tell you, I also believe it's not just the traditional academics, but in this day and age in which we live, our kids need after-school programs. They need sports. If they don't, they will find themselves in trouble. And that's from my experience. 9 years of dealing with drug addicts. It didn't start with hardcore drugs. It started with alcohol. It started with soft drugs, and it grew. And they will tell you why. They weren't busy. They weren't challenged. They had nothing to do. So I'm a firm believer of those things. So when I say academics, I really do mean more than that. So then you do the very best that you can. That's when the pain starts. Because again, I've done budgets for 12 years. Thank goodness I've had, actually, if you looking even a little bit longer than that in the budgets I have done since I'm now deputy, but I've had a good rate of success. Why? It just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of work. It goes, the superintendent, it goes back to that superintendent needing to go into the community. I have to be the one to sell that budget. I need to have them get that vision. And I know, I'm not old. I'm on the younger end of old, but I'm not old yet. But there's a lot of people on fixed budgets and they have difficulty. And then I understand that. But if there's going to be a future to Dolgeville, it's going to be education. There's 100 kids from out of district. If your budget gets to a place where you're hurting students, that's going to dry up and that's going to hurt you more. I mentioned to you 140 students, $1 million. You know, I'm a believer in the international program because it brings a much higher rate of return as far as bringing money into a district and into the families. So I think I need to go out and communicate the things that are possible. You got to get them to understand if there's going to be a future to Dolgeville, it's going to be as we pass budgets. Conservative budgets, absolutely. But you cannot continue. I'm sorry for any community member that's listening. I've seen the cuts that have been made over the last 5 years. You can't continue making those degree of cuts. You can't lose another 7.5% over the next 5 years because honestly, there really will not be much of a school district to save. That might not be popular, but that's the truth.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
That's okay. Do you have water there?
I do. If you don't mind, I'm going to grab some. It's been a long day. Thank you. Thank you for that.
So the next question shifts it a little bit. How do you plan to build relationships with your staff, and how closely will you work with them?
That's an excellent question. I think if I had a common theme, all during the day, would probably be my leadership style is very much relational. I am a people person, just who I am. I enjoy being around people. So I do believe there's this separation. I do believe in professionalism, looking at each and every staff member. They have their responsibility. And they know that responsibility and they are effective. They do an excellent job. From everything that I've been able to see, I'm so impressed with the teachers and the staff at Dolgeville. So they are professionals. And what is my job? My job is support and resources. So that's what I have to bring to the table. And how is that done? That's done, number one, through having an open door policy. I think people have to feel comfortable, and in community, I want you to feel comfortable. And actually, even going back to the budget, one of the things I did was to help explain in a little bit more effective way our district. I used to do a second cup of coffee. I would look forward to doing that again. I did that at Warrensburg. I did that for the first number of years when I was at Newcomb, but then eventually everybody got to know who I was. But I want people to know, and I want my staff to know me. Wish I can say that's all it takes. It also takes trust, and trust takes time. So, and trust also goes well beyond words. Tonight, you know, I hope you like the words that I share, but honestly, those words will be pretty worthless if I was brought into Dolgeville and I didn't back it up with action. And then that action will bring trust. So whether you're talking about, it's the same thing, whether you're talking about staff or you're talking about the community, and the same answer, how closely will you work with them? Part of it's me. I want to work closely with them. It's just who I am. I will work closely with students. I was asked the question about, how involved will you be with the community? I can guarantee you'll probably see me so much you'll get sick of me. It's just the way that I am. I hope you won't get sick of me. But my point is it takes that involvement. It takes the superintendent getting together with staff. It gets with the community, with students, with stakeholders. That's the only way that you can successfully build a district.
Thank you. What was the most difficult thing you had to deal with as an administrator, and how did you deal with it, and what did you learn?
I honestly, this is one of the things that I honestly, as you can see from my looking at the camera, I really I don't have to look down at all, but I had to write a few things down because I feel almost embarrassed to say, you know what I tell people about Newcomb? That the worst day in Newcomb is still better than the best day anywhere else. I've had a pretty boring experience at Newcomb, but I also think that's because I'd like to take some credit, and some of that credit would be the creating of culture and relationship that I do have with students. I've had students actually tell me that they have not made wrong decisions, much like a child would to their parents, say, because I didn't want you to be upset with me. I didn't want you to be hurt by my actions. So I'm going to give you a rather boring list. And if you don't mind, I'm going to look down just for a second. It was a difficult thing. And actually, when I look at these, most of these really are not too much student related. They're kind of family related and kind of staff related. But, there was a time when, several times when I wanted to keep a student in district. And I've had people fight me, strongly fight me. They believe we were not qualified to keep that student, and they were wanting to ship out that student. You got to realize something for Newcomb. We ship out, you're talking about an hour away. I looked at that as almost cruel when you're looking at a young child with all kind of educational and academic issues. So all of a sudden send them that far away. And I will tell you, in that situation, that was my call to make. I had the support of the board. I certainly had the support of the parents. And I think what I learned from that was, again, that was kind of early on in my experience, and what was still at that time for me a hard decision was a right decision. And at the end of the day, I've learned something. I got to look in the mirror at the end of the day and in the evening, and I got to be happy with what I see. And I will tell you now, I will always do what is best and right for students because yeah, I work for you, but I also work for them. And so that was a tough one. Reporting students to CPS is never an easy thing because I've never reported one where there wasn't love and the parents weren't trying to do the best that they possibly could with the limitations that they faced. But again, at the end of the day, I could look in the mirror and say it was best for kids. So I was able to live with that. Same lesson I've learned, and probably in all three of my examples. I faced the other one this year, honestly. We bring in students from other districts, and we also, of course, in this year of COVID, I got a lot of flack for thinking of bringing in international students. I actually have 3. It was not easy. We had to quarantine. We brought them in 2 separate groups, 2 separate quarantine groups. I brought in somebody to be with them while they were quarantining. I had nasty notes, and basically, if somebody dies, it's going to be on you. And that was honestly that was tough because I would never do anything to harm the community. But I did talk to, and the superintendent that we have now, we talked to the attorney, and the attorney says, you can't just be capricious and arbitrary. You can't say yes to students from other communities and no to internationals. You either have to shut it down for everybody or you have to say yes for everybody. I had a hard time selling my teachers and community on that. But again, I had to look in the mirror. I had to do what's right. And honestly, we went through the quarantine perfectly with no issues and knocking on everything wood around me. Thank goodness we have not had any issues to date. So again, kind of boring for a lot of districts, but still every decision that I make is a learning experience for me. And every decision I make is sometimes they're tough decisions, but they're the right decisions for kids.
There are no right or wrong answers to any of these, so thank you.
Thank you.
Why did you choose to apply for this position here at Dolgeville Central Schools?
Well, I think I've shared this a couple of times, but I really think it comes down to this, is that when I was applied to Dolgeville, I went ahead and I was looking at what you had. And Sandy, I've mentioned this now several times, I'm sorry to say, but when I looked towards Dolgeville, I didn't know that much, but I knew enough to understand that looking at what you were looking for, it was like, wow, everything you were looking for were things that I could provide to the district. So at first, I really didn't know that much about Dolgeville. Then I saw what you were looking for, and it was like, that's kind of amazing to me. I mean, you can, I would imagine most candidates can go through a list and they can probably say, yeah, I probably fit half of these things. I went through the whole entire list. And I actually called my wife over and I said, hon, this is simply amazing to me. Let me read what they're looking for, and you tell me if I meet the criteria. So that excited me a little bit. Then I came and spent some time. I told you 2 visits to Dolgeville. And I like rural communities, and I really saw it as being a place that I could fit in. And probably probably that cherry on top of the sundae that I always love to have is spending time today. You do. I mean, you've been through a traumatic experience as a district with so many things going on with COVID and with finances and all of that. But what an amazing staff that you have. And I really, my wife is actually not in town right now. So between every interview, I was giving her kind of, the blow by blow. And the comment I continually said is, wow, it is absolutely amazing here. So what started as just seeing the advertisement grew from that point to where I am tonight.
Yeah. I have to agree as another outsider, because BOCES, of course, is not inside Dolgeville, but I have always been impressed with their staff, with their leaders, their facilities. It's just, very impressive community, and the board is just delightful.
Absolutely, I agree.
So the last question that came from the community, what will be your main focus here at Dolgeville Central School?
Well, I'm going to sort of go back to a little bit what I shared a little bit earlier today. There is that active part and the inactive part. I think, my main focus, if I would be brought to Dolgeville, would have to be just a couple of things. It's a very poor example, but that fly on the wall of I have to listen. I think most people come into a new position, they use their mouth. I got to not use my mouth and use my ears to hear, my eyes to see. I need to learn the people, the culture, the community, and the stakeholders. That's the first thing first. I have to be able to do that. Second thing is superintendent is we don't know all things, and we don't have the answers to all things. But what we do need is we need to know the answers to all things and where to find those. So I need to be to know and learn all the players and who does what. That's secondary. Third thing I've already started. The board has already seen. I have a file that must be 8 inches deep of stuff about your school district. So that is also important. I need to continue the studies of all of the aspects of your policies, your procedures, contracts. I got to learn your district. And that is one of the great ways of learning a district, that inactive part. Now I come to the activity. As far as becoming more active in the district, I think it's varied. I do need to communicate. I need to be a part of it. I need to be very active. So part of my focus will be that that involvement in the community. It has to be that communication has to take place. I think I have to. I really have to have that understanding of what the school district is all about. So yes, I need to communicate. I need to be a part. I need to I need to then be being more active. I need to know a little bit more what's going on. 3 through 8th grade testing, participation rate, ELA, and math. I have to get a little bit of a handle on that. The budget is essential. I need to know that. I found out today that your comptroller's audit, there hadn't been one for about 10 years. It's extremely unfair because I had to do 3 in 12 years. So that's going to happen. Your DCIP is your district comprehensive improvement plan. That's your guiding light. Yeah. And that's going to be audited because that's what New York State does. They're going to come and audit and see, have you been following that? So I think there are enough action plans to get me started, but probably if I would add, I think I learned this today. Your building is beautiful on the outside, but there are some concerns on the inside. Small districts, I do have a lot of insight because I've been there, done it, because I was really the only administrator at the time. So I had to learn these things. So I would have to add building, and then and that will probably keep me busy for the first couple of weeks.
All right, so that concludes the questions, and we're exactly on schedule for you to have some closing remarks.
Well, I learned I do a lot of public speaking, but I didn't want to miss anything. So honestly, when I got to put my glasses back on, but I do want you to know that somebody once told me, if you can't be good, be short. So my closing comments are a little bit shorter than my opening comments, but I would like to read them to you again. So in closing, I do think I bring to Dolgeville the necessary 3 E's for academic and financial success. First is energy. People who know me know I am extremely high energy. My wife defines me as addicted to chaos. But honestly, I do admit I go to bed a little bit earlier than I once did, but it is still not unusual. This morning I was up by 4 o'clock, and that's not unusual. In addition, I do work every evening, every Saturday, and every Sunday. It's what's needed in what I call this age of unknown tomorrows. So I want you to know, though, because energy alone isn't a good thing unless it's directed energy. And I do bring more than energy. I think I bring creativity and out-of-the-box thinking. It began in stabilizing financially struggling teen challenge centers, continued in Portchester when I was dealing with deep in poverty kids. They would get off the plane on a Saturday to come to the United States, and on Sunday, they would literally, in January, they would come without proper clothing or jackets. And I created Edison's Closet, which was a highly successful. We did this in Portchester's down in Westchester County. So you can imagine, I was envious of some of the clothing that we had, but we did it as an exchange. You bring in one ratty piece of torn up clothing and you could go away, and I had people leave with bags and bags. I'm talking about garbage bags full of clothing. Finally, the recognition of our programs at Newcomb, but especially it has been the international program, which I had already shared, which redefined our school district. The second E is education. You notice I have a very diverse and varied education. I have a master's in management from the University of Phoenix, a master's in elementary education from Fordham, and in addition, a specialized diploma in educational administration also from Fordham. But the last D is the one I would like to close with because I believe it's the most important. I have the experience necessary, especially in these difficult days. As I have stated at the very beginning, being a superintendent is tough in good times, and these are not good times. Never has experience been more important. I am grateful for the more than 10 years of advanced education that I have invested in. But to me, if I was to be honest to you, on a day-to-day basis, I use my superintendents, my 12 years as being a superintendent, I use that more each day than I ever do my education. But it's actually maybe a little bit not only my practical superintendent's experience, but I will say my experience in financing, banking, nonprofit, and in schools, because finances are a very big part of today's educational and school learning experience. It's where we are, especially in these coming ages. Again, with 20% cuts, I don't think it's going to just be 20%. I think we're going to have cuts every year, hopefully declining each year, but we're going to have some hard times. I think we're going to look back and say, wow, 2008 was easy compared to this day and age we find ourselves in. So I would like to thank each and every one of you. It's a little bit funny. I see two pictures of myself, so I can't see you all. And Sandy, please assure me that I haven't been speaking to myself this entire time.
You have been live streamed.
That would be a horrible thing to finding out at the end of the day there was nobody listening to me. But I thank you for what I consider just a great opportunity to share my heart with you this evening. I would absolutely love the privilege, and I would count it a privilege to be able to join your community and your school. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We certainly appreciate your interest and all the time you've spent with us over the last several weeks, actually. So thank you very much. As you know, the board's meeting tomorrow. So we have another finalist this evening and then get some feedback from our community. And the board will be looking at all the feedback from all the different stakeholders, including the community, in their meeting tomorrow night. So they are moving this right forward. So thank you very much, Skip.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, community, as well. If you're out there, that is.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. We will now have a short break. The next interview begins at 5:30.
Hello?
Hello, Joe. I just wanted to welcome you. We're still on a break until 5:30, allowing the community to have a little bit of a break too. So let's just really quick do a sound check. Can you speak for just a second?
Yes, we are on a short break between superintendent finalist interviews.
All right. Matt, I'm hoping that came through fine. Okay, Matt says the sound was fine, so.
Good.
I hope you enjoyed your day meeting people today.
I did. It was awesome.
Yeah. It's a pretty great team over there in Dolgeville.
I agree. I'm hoping my cat doesn't wake up, but because he gets pretty feisty.
Well, those have become Zoom classics now. So.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Joe, during the interview, once we get started, I will spotlight you so that you'll be on the main screen so that the community has the best view of you, since I'm really kind of irrelevant in this. I'm just the facilitator. So just be aware you're going to get spotlighted.
Yikes.
Okay, let me stop sharing. Okay, so I have spotlighted you. So it's about 5:30. Let me welcome back the community. We're very happy to have, at least for the first interview, we had 40 community members that we could see had logged in. There could be others on Facebook and things like that, but that's what we're hoping for. And just a reminder to the community that there will be a survey posted after this second interview. And the Board of Education is looking for your feedback, so please take the time. You'll be asked to provide what you saw as strengths and what you saw as concerns. So on that note, though, I'd like to go ahead and welcome Mr. Joseph Gilfus, who is our second and final finalist tonight. Joe, welcome on behalf of the Dolgeville community. I'd like to start by asking you to make some opening comments, please.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Joseph Gilfus, and Dolgeville, I want to be your next superintendent. I'd first like to thank the entire community who took the time to respond to the district survey and to provide questions for me today. I hope our time together gives you an opportunity to learn more about me as a person, also as an educational leader, and helps explain why I want to serve as your next superintendent. You're probably asking yourself, who is this person? So let me tell you who I am. I was raised in rural Wheatsport, New York. I'm a first-generation high school graduate, first-generation college attendee, and college graduate. I am the proud son of a single mother and younger siblings, and learned to grow up very quickly as a young man through my mother's support and also through the support of my grandparents, who helped my mom quite a bit all along. I'm an individual who, when I attended school, I'm going to be quite honest with you, what got me to school were extracurricular activities. And I learned later the importance of a good education. And when I went to college, I had to learn to be a student right away and survive at first, but then I did very well once I was committed to it. My academic background includes an undergraduate degree in English, a master's in physical education, athletic administration. I have my certificate of advanced study in educational leadership through SUNY Brockport. I've taken the Superintendent's Development Program at SUNY Oswego, and I'm currently pursuing my Ed Doctorate at Syracuse University in Ed Leadership. And I'm taking it simply because I want to learn. It has nothing to do with the letters or anything like that. So I really have grown to enjoy learning. My background started I started in sales, actually. Did not like it. I started substitute teaching and coaching, and I fell in love. I started that at subbing and coaching at Cato Meridian many years ago. And that's where I met my wife of 29 years, and also my pursuit to become a teacher. So I attended the Wells College Certification Program in Aurora, New York, and I'm certified in English and physical education. My first full-time experience was in the Syracuse City School District, where I taught at the William Beard School, which is the alternative school. So if you couldn't make it in the regular setting, you came to Beard. It was a great experience for me. It was my first full-time job. And after that, I moved on to exclusively the past 28 years, all rural small school settings. Port Byron Port Byron Central and Cuba County as a physical education teacher and coach. Pulaski as a small school athletic director, teacher and coach. Then moved into my administrative career at Camden. I was there for 4 years as a dean of students, athletic administrator, and assistant high school principal. And then I moved on to Thousand Islands High School in 2004. I was there for 17 graduating classes. I resigned for the purposes of retirement June 30th. Basically, I accepted an incentive and it gave me an opportunity to pursue my next chapter. I'm being very selective in my pursuit of my next chapter. I definitely want to be the superintendent at Dolgeville, and that's my pursuit. A couple of other things that I think are important. I've already mentioned my wife, Jana, of 29 years. She is the director of undergraduate studies in the writing program at Syracuse University. We have 3 children. Our oldest, Zachary, is 27. He's a naval architect in San Diego. Our daughter, Georgia, is a wilderness therapy major and fell in love with horses and is a horsewoman in Vermont. And our youngest, Tyler, was a student athlete at Syracuse University, graduating from the Maxwell School in Political Science, and will begin his master's in teaching at SUNY Oswego for elementary education. He wants to teach grade 1 and 2. So that's me. That's my upbringing, my history, my work history, and my family. And thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Just a short while ago, you should have received the questions because of the potential for a Zoom issue or a live stream issue. You should have received them to refer to, but I will be reading each one, and please feel free to ask me to repeat, okay?
I will, thank you.
The school has revenues comprised, let me just reiterate. These questions came directly from the community. So, and I certainly appreciate that they submitted them. First question, the school has revenues comprised of school tax collection and state and federal aid, and then some donations. Depending on the school year, a school district has a deficit or a surplus. How do you define a deficit or a surplus?
Defining a deficit or surplus is at the end of a school year, budgetary year, You determine whether or not you have funds left over that were predicted within your budget. And a deficit means you didn't have enough funds. When I look at the question, I think about, and I always have as a educational leader, the importance of really keeping a close pulse on a projected budget. And when you put together a budget that should be held accountable and responsible for, you have to keep a close pulse on it throughout the year. There could be some unexpected expenditures, such as the COVID, or could be other things, such as a new student that might move into your district that has specific needs and so forth that you haven't planned for ahead of time. It could be something in your infrastructure, a heating system, or some kind of a water break, or something of that nature that is catastrophic. But to answer the question, the budget is put together, developed with all the intentions to provide what you can as a school community to your students program-wise. So with that said, you hope that you predict the appropriate budget, and when it's adopted and supported by the Board of Education and brought forward to the school community, that is your best, I don't want to say guess, but that's your best body of work in presenting it to the taxpayers and the community at large. That's our responsibility. So I think it's important to understand that you're transparent at all times, and you have to keep a constant pulse on it and utilize the resources around you. Again, a deficit is when your expenditures have overdrawn your predicted budget, and a surplus is when you have not. So I guess that's it for me on that one.
All right, thank you. Over the past several years, the voters of this district have voted down the proposed school budget. Can you describe the methods you would use to gain the voter support for the school budget?
I would, and with my team of people at school, I would do everything I could, and I will do everything I can to open up more communication platforms with the community, along side by side with the Board of Education. When we bring a recommended budget, you can rest assured that we've exhausted every imaginable resource to provide the best programs for the Dolgeville Central School students. I have, in the past month, I've made 4 visits to Dolgeville and the different hamlets in the village and so forth. This past Saturday, I made it known who I was, since it was announced I was a finalist. The other previous 3, I did not do that because I didn't want to compromise this process. And it's been an excellent one. But for me, it's about not only inviting people to us, but going out to them in the different townships, town halls, fire departments, libraries, and so forth, and really getting out there and not looking at it as selling your budget, but communicating the details of the budget, the importance, and how much we appreciate the support, and welcome any questions that might come with these conversations. And I think communication is the key. It needs to be constant, transparent. And then going back to the first question, if something should arise, then we need to communicate that. I think that's really important. People want to feel like they're in the know, and they deserve to be in the know. We're talking about the most important asset, infrastructure and assets, students, that the school community has. I like face-to-face as much as possible. And certainly we would use other platforms, but I want to get out there. I want to be in the community.
All right. What is your experience in regards to cyber threats, ransomware, and hackers trying to access sensitive student data? How will you protect our school district from ransomware? And would you consider paying a ransom to hackers?
I have to admit, I've never experienced this before. I've heard about it. You know, there's a new reality within this high-tech hacking. We have to make sure that our infrastructure and our technology is up to date and we're compliant. Ed Law 2D compliant, working with our local BOCES, Herkimer BOCES, to make sure our software and our firewalls are up to date and compliant. Very important. It's the law, and it's our responsibility to protect student information. We know that. There are other, I know there are other resources out there to help, fund some of these additional costs which have been imposed, with LTG and Smart Schools Bond Act, of course, and also E-rate. So there are some other resources out there along with our local BOCES to help us with that. But really pulling on Matt and his team to help guide us through that is critical and very important. But I have to be honest, I've never personally experienced that or professionally in my career. But we certainly want to be compliant and ready.
What would your thought be on the last part? Would you consider paying a ransom to hackers?
No. I'd rather use the money to put the pre-K program back in place.
All right. It seems digital media and mobile devices are overtaking our classrooms. My kids tell me that Dolgeville allows the use of personal electronic devices, smartphones, in classrooms too much. How do you define the current ideal learning environment for students in a classroom, and how do you think it will change in the next decade?
Well, as a building principal for 17 years at Thousand Islands, we tackled the whole PED, personal electronic device. We're a district in my building, we did not allow the use of them during school days, though we also were the first to pilot a one-to-one initiative with Chromebooks, which was highly successful. My philosophy is this, and with the permission of my superintendent at the time, when I was at Thousand Islands, there were times in which it seemed too appropriate to be able to utilize student personal electronic devices. And there were only a few occasions in which we were given approval to do that in the classroom so that it complemented the learning environment. Do I think the use of digital technologies is going away? We know it's not. I think there has to be a really smart, guided balance, because you can never replace a teacher in the classroom. That's where everything happens. That's where, with great teaching, great learning takes place. So I look at it as a supplement only, when appropriate, never to be overused or abused, and certainly not to ever take a place of good old-fashioned great teaching. That's the ultimate. That's what it's all about.
And the second part of the question was, how do you think this will change in the next decade?
Well, certainly with our current situation, having remote platforms has been very beneficial. Also trying to catch up and make sure that our staff and our students are up to date with the utilization and maximizing the abilities of these technologies. They're going to continue to change. So with that said, we have to stay current, and we have to be, follow guidance of our neighbors, of our local BOCES, also Matt and his crew. And we want our students to be digitally literate, but we also want to make sure all our students that there's digital equity and the utilization of technology. And I know that that is a problematic thing right now with the remote area of Dolgeville and other school districts that I'm aware of. I have lots of colleagues in lots of different places that are rural, and they're struggling as well with that. So it's not going away. Never, in my opinion or philosophy, will it ever replace the person in the classroom, but we certainly have to make sure that we're prepared for it. We don't, I'm all about quality use and quality, what we're going to decide on what platforms and infrastructures and so forth, because those are a huge investment that come with a cost. So we have to be very careful about, our pursuit in that area. So really and truly, we have to stay current. We have to make sure if our students are going to be well prepared for their future and to go into the world prepared, we got to make sure that they're digitally, literate. And that's really going to be important regardless of what you're doing. So thank you for reframing that in that second part of the question.
Sorry, what is your experience with grant writing to secure additional opportunities for our school district?
My experience with grant writing, three that come to mind: Seeds for Success grant writing, and that was tied to our food and nutrition, and also a greenhouse. Also, we were nominated from the farm that was across the street from us, a huge dairy farm, in fact, for the Monsanto grant, which I wrote and successfully was awarded. We used that for ag and technology, also a 3D printer. And also I played a major role in the Carol White grant for physical education, health and wellness, which we received a $1.2 million grant. And they were matching grants as well. So we worked a lot with community and so forth with that. So that really enabled us to do a lot of things at Thousand Islands. Those are the three main grants that kind of come to mind. I think with grant writing, there are many grants out there to attempt to go after. There are funds out there that some grants people don't even apply to. So I think really tapping into your resources in our school community. I've worked with a school community member at Thousand Islands on other grants too, who was a grant writer, and we were successful on some, but not all. But you never, are awarded ones that you don't go for. So. And I think it's definitely an avenue to secure funds, and something that I would definitely advocate for at the state and federal level. And I know that the district attempted to secure a grant for the pre-K program. And when I saw the list of schools that were awarded, I don't understand why Dolgeville wasn't. So we're going to continue that pursuit.
And just to extend that question just a bit from what was submitted, can you think of any other revenues or awards sources that you might be able to pursue?
Well, I think, when it comes to other opportunities, revenues, and so forth, just specifically with grants or just in general?
Not necessarily, right. It could be some type of award or some other funding source.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to become great friends with our local politicians, Assembly and Senate. I mean, senators. I'd be willing to go to Albany to meet with Governor Cuomo, in fact. That's the way I am. That's the kind of person I am. I want to build a relationship. I want these individuals to come into our school community. I want them to know that, what challenges and struggles this district has been under for the last few years. I want them to know that the pre-K program, I can highlight that. We had 70 students in it and 90 with the third graders. And that program, poof. And we want help. We want that program back in place. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. The Dolgeville Central School District relies heavily on state aid. The governor has indicated a possible 20% cut in state aid could be coming this year. Please describe how you plan to provide a quality education to our students during very difficult financial times.
Well, I know that the state aid is at 71%. And I know, with the exception of a couple of percent, it's local tax. I'm an optimist, and I believe that 20% is not going to be 20%. I am an optimist. I am an optimist about that. And, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that some of what I'm hearing is that there's going to be a big push to support additional funds from the federal level to the state. And I hope that the state pushes them into the educational school districts. And, but however, Dolgeville's they've been gutted the last year or two. The deficit, I knew, I did my homework. I've talked to people. And today during the interviews all day, there are just layers and layers of personnel and programs and so forth. I've mentioned the pre-K program, and enough is enough. And I don't know all the details behind it, but I also know that the district is at a point where they're busting at the seams. So for me, before I even consider anything as a leader of this district, I'm going to pursue every possible revenue. I'm going to talk with Jessica Radley about what revenues we have and reserves. I'm going to look at cooperative programs with local districts. I'm going to have conversations with you, Sandy, at BOCES, and how we can do some more COSER services, or even host some of those programs. So I'm an optimist. I'm confident. And I already mentioned about building relationships with local politicians. And I've done that in the North Country as well. I have met Senator Ritchie and so forth. And I know that there's benefits to that and up in that area. And I know that there will be in the Dolgeville area as well. And I'm going to be committed to that. And I'm not going to take no for an answer. And I'm going to make sure everybody understands and sees my effort behind that, because Dolgeville deserves it. They deserve to be heard. They deserve more help. And they're doing everything they can right now to make ends meet. And I know that. So, and that's actually an attraction for me. That's one of the things that I am attracted to with Dolgeville. I'm not afraid of challenge. I'm not afraid of conflict. I'm not afraid of any of that. And I'm eager to tackle that along with the school board and the school community.
All right, thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, how do you plan to build relationships with your staff, and how closely will you work with them?
I'm a people person. I like to talk to people as much as face-to-face as possible. I like to hear their stories. With my feet on the ground. I think it's really important to build relationships with your staff. I feel that's one of the things I'm very proud of. And when I say staff, that means everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what position you hold, everybody is valued and important. My relationships with all sectors of my school at Thousand Islands were extremely positive. Because they were respectful, and I am legitimately interested in people. So, and I like people, and I think people are good. I think they all want to be good and want to do good things. So even though my glass of water next to me, like earlier, is half empty. My glass is full. I really think you have to invest time into people and build relationships. That's how you build trust, and it expands into the school community as well. And I'm totally committed to that, and I welcome that. And let's see if I missed anything. Well, I'll work hand in hand with people. I'm all about collaboration and I'm in shared decision making. That's how I'm interested in ideas. I'm interested in what people have to say or think about problem solving. I'm no expert in anything, but I'm going to be committed to including all individuals. And I want to hear the voices of our students as well. It's very important, and I shared that with the board. I think our students, they have a lot to offer with respect to feedback and ideas. And I think it's really important that we include them in that process as well.
Thank you. What was the most difficult thing you had to deal with as an administrator? How did you deal with it, and what did you learn?
Well, I've been in education for 29 years. I've been a school leader for 22. I've worked with thousands of parents and students and community members and staff over my time. And I have faced several challenging and difficult moments. Some of them, staff and student death, suicide, murder, student incarceration, the war on drugs and heroin, severe poverty, fire, snow and ice storms. I even directly was involved in a senior trip bus accident, and no one was killed, thank God. So I've been in several situations. Each of these tragic events and circumstances are very difficult for everyone involved. And as a school leader, for me, it's important to always place others first and attend to the needs of those individuals using every possible resource. For me, the most difficult situation, I had dealt with the suicide of one of my students. And as we tried to heal from that, one of the parents filed a lawsuit against the school district, Thousand Island Central Schools, a few months later, claiming that their son had committed suicide as a result of enduring bullying by other students. The chief U.S. district court judge at the time dismissed the lawsuit. It never went to court, citing that there was no evidence for the parent's claim. Prior to the suicide of my student and immediately after and throughout the lawsuit, and even today, I have always held a tremendous amount of empathy for the family. I can never imagine losing a child, especially to suicide. And to be honest, the lawsuit, the accusations were very difficult, deeply unfair, and hurtful. So following some of the things that we learned, following my student's suicide, our district, what we did is re-examined our suicide prevention program. We initiated programs to include more formal suicide prevention, student and adult mentoring programs, the Sources of Strength from the University of Rochester, which is a research-based program. We looked and improved ways to report concerns and improve awareness. And we did that through partnerships and programs. That was my most difficult circumstance.
That's certainly a very difficult situation. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Why did you choose to apply for this position here at Dolgeville Central School?
Well, it kind of started when I had the opportunity to pursue my next chapter and be able to be extremely selective in that process. When the position opened and I read the brochure, I looked at the characteristics and I said, that sounds like me. That sounds like a wonderful place to not only be part of and work, but to lead. That was the first starter for me. So through my application process, my interest began to snowball, if you will. And each of my visits to the school community, which were 4 in the past month, the excitement and the idea of being your next superintendent excited me more and more every time. And, you know, I can tell through my conversations with adults, students, community members, business owners, that Dolgeville is a great place, great support, and they really care about their school community and their community at large. I'm a rural person. It meets everything that I look for. Joe Gilfus, my upbringing, I'm one of those people sitting in that chair at school many years ago, but nonetheless, I can relate to the school community extremely well throughout my career. And honestly, I'm, after today, meeting with the constituents and the different groups, I'm even more excited. I'm very hopeful for the opportunity. And I really am looking forward to the opportunity to lead this school district in a wonderful, supportive community.
Thank you. And the last question from the community: what will be your main focus here at Dolgeville Central School?
Well, I'm going to speak in general terms. I want to continue to build on strengths and, with respect to, continue to work on areas of challenge. And that includes communication. And I'm not saying that there is not transparent communication, because I believe there is through my discussions with people in the community. There's a lot of support, pride. I want to continue to build on that. I want to grow that. I want to make sure that we're providing the very best programs that we can for our students. I want to make sure they're prepared for the future. I am committed, regardless of what a student aspires to, I'm committed to helping them with the resources, providing the resources to their teachers and other staff members to make them successful, to be contributing people in society. And you may or may not hear a lot of me say a lot, college and career ready. I'm a believer of career ready, because I think the pathways to careers can mean many things. And, from apprenticeships to internships, to a 1-2 year program, to a 4-year program, to the world of work, and even military. And I've always prided myself with that, and helping students with my staff and our larger school community to, allow students to aspire to wherever their interests are. So, and dream about what they want to do. So I think that's really important. That's what you get with me as superintendent and as a school community member.
All right. So thank you very much for answering the questions. I do want to give you the opportunity to make closing remarks.
Of course. Thank you. So when I met with the board last, I asked them if I want them to think about some characteristics, and I wanted to offer them some of the things that I can bring to the district as a leader. And I said to them, I also want to be held accountable. So as I share some things in my final thoughts here with you, I want to, if I'm lucky enough and fortunate enough to become your next superintendent, I want you to hold me accountable to these things. I promise I will make a long-term commitment to the Dolgeville community, and I'll be all in as a community member. I will ensure that the health and safety of the Dolgeville Central School District and community is at the forefront of everything we do. I will support the best practices and a positive learning environment for all students. Equity there is no compromise, and always advocate for student programs and extracurricular activities. I will ensure that Dolgeville Central School District is fiscally accountable to the school community. Please know that every decision that I make or recommend to the Board of Education as superintendent will be in the best interest of students and their growth to go out into the world well prepared, regardless of what they dream or aspire to. And finally, as your superintendent, I will be a proud ambassador of the district. I will be visible, approachable, available, and I will pour my heart and soul into the Dolgeville school community. I want to thank the Dolgeville Board of Education. I would like to thank the Dolgeville School District and school community. And I'd like to thank District Superintendent Sherwood for a wonderful process, and just leave you with this. I'm hopeful for the opportunity to lead your district, Dolgeville Central Schools, and thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me just take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of the Board of Education. We certainly appreciate all the time you've spent with us in the last several weeks in various venues. Just to remind the community that there will be a community survey posted, and we'll be looking for your feedback. This will go to the Board of Education. Your strengths and concerns of each of the candidates will get recorded and reported to the Board of Education in their meeting tomorrow night. So on that note, Mr. Gilfus, thank you so much for your time. And the board is meeting tomorrow, so it is a tight timeline, and you will certainly hear from me again soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.